Welcome to The Exchange, the program that introduces you to lots of interesting people. Throughout the season, we'll be exchanging many ideas on wide-ranging topics that affect all of us every day. I'm Rob Buckingham, and my co-host on The Exchange is my wife, Christie.
Hello, it is good to be here, and I'm looking forward to the show today. On
today's show, we'll discuss what work-life balance looks like in a society that is constantly stimulated with all sorts of technology. In our 24/7 society, what are the repercussions of not being able to switch off? To discuss this topic, we're delighted to be joined by the co-founder and creative director of Media Saints, Michael Woods. Welcome, Michael.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. We're also thrilled to be joined by psychologist Sally-Anne McCormack. Sally-Anne currently works in private practice with adults suffering from depression, anxiety, stress and various personal issues. Welcome, Sally-Anne.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Before we start our discussion, let's look at this video.
Computers, smartphones, tablets, and the constant need to respond are part of our daily work life. How can we cope with sensory overload? Can we balance it out? What are its effects, and where are we heading?
Such a practical topic today on The Exchange, and it's good to have Michael and Sally-Anne with us. I'm going to aim this first question at you, Sally-Anne, for a very good reason. What has been the biggest change in work life in the past 10 years? And the reason I'm asking you is that Michael was 15.
Michael's been working for the last 10 years.
After implying I'm old. Yeah. Yes. Look, the biggest difference certainly is technology. I mean, we are forever present. We are there with our... I noticed that you all have technologies in front of you. I'm feeling quite alone here, sitting in my chair, but we're always on alert. We are always available to the community and to whoever we work with or our friends and family.
Whereas in time past, you could actually switch off.
There was a knock-off time. There was a time where you actually got in your car and you went home. Many people work from home these days. Many people are just constantly available, and that's the big difference these days.
Whereas you, Michael, you never would have had a time without iPads and technology.
Well, there was definitely a time before iPads.
Yeah, but not for you.
He's not that old.
He's not that old.
There's been no real, we're new generation, new lifestyle, new working lifestyle, and I work from home. I decide when I get up in the morning if I'm going into the office. So, because I've got everything set up at home, I've got everything set up at the office. I can Skype. My business partner works online. Some of our staff work online all the time.
That's just a new way to work.
One of the problems with that, though, one of the questions, I guess, is really when do you finish? When does work finish, and when does free time start? And I guess that's really a challenge with the technologies these days, because there isn't a time, and I actually work from home as well, there isn't a time where you're not available. And it used to be just the telephone, and if someone else was on the line, you couldn't get through. But these days, people Skype, email. We're just always available, and we have to be able to find a way of balancing our lives.
So how do you set boundaries?
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm actually not very good at setting boundaries. You're asking the wrong person.
Okay, so let's ask Michael then.
Well, from a managing staff perspective, we really try to push our staff to take time off and push away from us. And when they leave, we try to make it as black and white as possible, especially a lot of the guys who are quite senior and, they have families. And, for me, I don't have kids. I've got a partner, and that's it. I don't mind getting a call at 11 o'clock from a client and, who's in a bit of trouble or a work project. But when we're managing staff, you've got to keep them, you've got to adhere to the way they want to be managed. And a lot of the time with a lot of the staff, it's after 5 o'clock, it's game over, don't call them. But on the other hand, you have our younger staff who, will call at midnight on a Saturday and say, we need something done, and it'll happen. And that's, it's horses for courses.
I think we really need to make sure, when we go into an employment situation, that we do make sure that we set up with our employers or our business what we want, what suits our lives best. Because there are those people that are accessed at midnight on a Saturday night who may not want to be. So we just have to make sure that we clarify the boundaries around that.
And there's certainly jobs that require you to be accessible 24/7, more or less. And there's jobs that certainly don't. So I think we have to look at what we are doing. I mean, do you see your work as work, or to you is it just your passion?
Oh, I don't know. Some days it's definitely work. Some days it's definitely passion.
Well, it's your passion that's kind of morphed into work, hasn't it? I mean, tell us a little bit about your business so we know the background to it.
Sure. So I started about, I can't remember, maybe 8 years ago, running video game tournaments. And I started running them, and then I used to film them. and I used to broadcast them online. And one day I pitched to Channel 31 to get this television broadcast done, and they said no. So we built a little bit of technology to actually do that ourselves on the internet. And then the GFC came and the whole thing fell over, and we were doing really well. We were the biggest tournament organisation in Australia. Fell over, and I thought I've got to go and actually use these skills that we've developed in these sort of technologies and commercialise them. So we built a digital agency, and since then we've built, we've been growing great. We've gone up to about 14, 16 staff, and we manage a lot of the sort of higher end digital education projects.
Yep.
So we do all of, we do big e-learning systems, we make educational video games, we do television ad campaigns, we do all other kinds of stuff, and we build a lot of stuff for the iPad, we build a lot of stuff for all different kinds of devices.
Yeah, it's
and,
wonderful.
It's exciting and it's fun, but you're right in the sense that when you're doing these kind of things, a lot of the time you are working extraordinary kind of weeks, you know, like I worked all weekend, and that was very normal for me.
So is the payoff for you then that you get to work flexible hours and all of that, you enjoy that, rather than 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, clock on, clock off?
I think the payoff is I love what I do.
Okay.
I love going in and doing everything from producing a film to an ad to a game. On Friday I was in at the Children's Hospital and we were showing our game off that we'd made, which is an arts game for the kids, and sitting there and watching a whole bunch of kids playing on an iPad, learning about art. And a lot of these kids have, very, heavy, maybe brain damage or sick, and to see them actually enjoying themselves, you go, you know what, I love my job. Like I love doing these kind of things. Like,
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
So that's
That's
the
so
thing,
good.
I guess, is that it is very rewarding. And for you, there's a murky or blurry area around whether it's work and whether it's play, because it sounds exciting. There's a lot of variety in there and a lot of fun and reward too. So I guess it is different for many of us who really enjoy their work too. I also, which is why I said I'm not very good at boundaries, because I love it too. I have, I do media, I see clients, I do lots of different things, and I love that too. I'm happy to be accessible at any time. One of the challenges, though, that we know with technologies that we're wondering about, I guess, is what that's doing to children's brains, actually. And we don't know whether it's good or bad, but it's definitely what they're finding in research is that we are rewiring the way that the neurons fire. And we're also looking at when we play games, when the children play games, and I'm sure your games are great, and lots of them are. We don't know if this is good or bad, but there's dopamine hits, and that's where you get this real excitement when something happens. Even when you use social media and little red icons pop up or whatever, we get really excited by those.
And disappointed if they're not there.
Oh, absolutely. So we don't know yet what this means for the future, but it is definite that the children's brains are being rewired, and they're very good at multitasking, or much better than we are at multitasking. So you would be much better than I am at those sorts of things. So.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We need to go to a break in just a moment, but before we do that, face-to-face communication, is that something that we're going to see less and less of and need to do less and less?
No way. Yeah.
We still need the human smile.
Oh, absolutely. It's imperative. Teams work better when they're together, and that's always going to be a fact of human nature. Skype and video conferencing is great, but could we do this with this amount of intimacy over Skype?
No. Not at all. Would you agree with that, Sally-Anne?
I would agree. And some of the, I don't want to bag it at all, because, a lot of people are using the internet to connect to people as well. People that they went to school with previously, old friends they're catching up with. There's even, dating sites and all those things as well, but certainly, reconnection. So there's some great things too. It'll never replace, as you said, the intimacy,
face-to-face.
because there's physical, chemicals that come out
I
when you
am
touch people.
so glad about that. We'll be back with more in just a moment on The Exchange. Welcome back to The Exchange. We're having an interesting discussion here with Michael Woods and Sally-Anne McCormack about how to switch off in an overstimulated society, aren't we, Christie?
Absolutely. And tell me, do you guys think that we always need to be doing something or responding to something?
I'll let you go first, because I'm going to disagree with you.
I think you absolutely need
know that?
downtime.
I do.
There's no doubt as to downtime, but it's just the choice is when is that downtime and in what form does that take. For everyone it's different. For me, I like video games, and the phone's off when I'm playing video games. But
Yeah, and one
Are
of
you
the
still
things,
doing something?
Yeah, of course.
And it's technology.
He's doing video games.
Yeah, you got to.
So downtime for you is not just kind of lying on a couch, relaxing, reading a paper or anything. It's video games.
I haven't bought a paper.
You'd be reading on your tablet.
Yeah. It's different for me.
It is. Sally-Anne?
It's different.
I think it's really important to have time away from the computers. I think you need to have technology-free times at different times in the day or week or whatever, because one of the things that we know in families is that, you know, how many times you sit at a table or people complain about sitting at a table with their children who are on their phones, their smartphones, and not really being present at the time with the family, and that's a problem for some families.
Well, we see that a lot, don't we? I mean, you know, watching TV, on the iPad, SMSing people. You know, I'm not talking about anyone in particular here.
But this is where I think we've either got to agree to differ or we've got to change our mindsets, because people, you know, I have been in situations where people have downright just been, you know, I've thought, is that rude? And now I also am thinking while they're texting or whatever, and then they say, oh, so-and-so says hello. Maybe they're just telling so-and-so that they're with me and they're having a really lovely time and they're just bringing somebody else into the conversation. Is that so bad?
Or maybe they're saying, gosh, I'm with Christie again. I don't know what to do. So, no, I think it's really rude. I think it's rude if you're having a conversation with someone to turn and start speaking to someone else. I think that's rude. And I find the same thing with technologies. But you disagree?
Yeah.
Do you think it's rude?
I've been in situations where I thought it was rude that the person told me to stop doing that. And, you know, I think when you're talking about overstimulation comes from the fact that we are working faster, harder, and we're doing more. And sometimes that has consequences. And, you know, when I deal with my friends, there's nothing weird or wrong about sending a text message while you're having a conversation. You know, it's not awkward. And some people find it awkward. And though I completely understand that, sometimes, you know, I live in a world where I've got to be responding to people. I've got to be doing these things.
Yes. And the very fact that you're with them means that you've chosen to be with them, but that means that you have to keep in touch with all the other stuff that's going on as well.
Do you explain that to them when you catch up?
Do you have to explain it?
Yes, I think you do.
Yeah, I think you do. I do. I sort of just say, look, I'm doing this or I'm doing this. But, you know, there was points where it was considered really rude. You know, 5 years ago, it was really rude to do that.
I still think it really is. Unless you set boundaries and you say, look, actually, I'm working today, so I've got my phone, but I'm happy to chat with you which is, I think, what you're saying, Christie.
Yes.
But for me, I think it's still rude what you're really saying is, I'm here with you, but I've got a better offer right now, just in the moment. So, yeah, I guess we come from different age groups, so...
Yeah, we do. Different. Yes, I still think it's rude, but that's just my thoughts. Let's go out on the streets and see what the people on the street think.
Today on the show, we've been chatting about sensory overload, and on the streets, we're going to ask if technology is making life easier or harder.
Personally, I think it's harder because I'm kind of an anti-technology kind of guy, hence my phone's 7 years old.
Be a bit of both, really. You know, it makes it easier to communicate with people, but you can lose touch with, you know, the real world and your friends and that because of it.
I reckon it makes it easier, a lot quicker, I reckon, as well.
As an IT student, in many ways, it does make things a lot easier, but also I think in legacy products and, you know, as the previous generation as well, it does make things a lot more difficult, like interaction between this generation and the past generation.
That's a hard question to answer. It's made certain aspects of my life easier, particularly at work, but technology also takes up a lot of time.
I can pay my bills on the phone, I can pay my bills on the internet, I don't have to race to the bank and be there by 4:30 or 5 o'clock at night time.
I would probably say a bit of both, actually. In some respects, obviously TV, it's very easy to sit your child down in front of the TV, but in the same respects I think it's better to get them out and about. So yeah, there's good and bad about it.
Do you think it's giving us more to do?
No, in a way it's giving us less to do, but more in the space of we can do it in our own comfort, but we actually do less.
People spend a lot of time on technology, you know, they don't go outside, play sport and that.
It is giving me more to do, but it's productive things to do because I can make money out of what I'm doing, or I can have good quality time with people I want to be with, sort of thing.
Yes, in a way. I think it makes you more accessible to people in general, so you're more sort of responsible to people in staying in contact and things like that. People tend not to... You pick up the phone a lot more. They go the easier option in some respects, yeah.
If you look now when people go out, like half the table's just looking down on their iPhone. And I don't know, I just think life's more simple without so much technology.
Been Interesting opinions out on the street. Joining us now is the Exchange's street talk reporter, Sandra Cavallo. Welcome.
Hi, how you going?
I was
Very
just checking
good.
my text while I was waiting for you.
Yeah, I felt like I needed to do that while I was here too.
Okay, ladies, put the
Okay,
technology
all right,
down.
Okay.
It was mixed out there, hey.
Totally mixed. I think a general consensus though that it is making life easier. But I found it quite interesting that someone said you don't go to the same depth of relationship with people because it's the quick and easy and it's fast. So I actually thought that was interesting.
Michael disagrees by the look on your face then. Why the look?
I think it's just a different style of communication. It's grass feeding, so you can't expect to get a full meal out of a grass feed. And I think in everything it actually enables stronger relationships by having more interstitial conversations, especially with people you don't know very well in either a business or a formal level. It gives you that interstitial ability to break the ice, so that when you do meet them, you can get in deep, get in quick. So
You feel as if you're actually building relationship along the way, yeah. And also, sometimes you actually think more. I'm finding this about as you text, and sometimes you just go, no, and you actually reword it. You think more than you would if you were just talking.
The problem, though, is often when you read a text, there's no gestures, there's no
there's little
intonation.
motion
the
things.
emoticons still too. It's not necessarily, like, I actually do love it. I sound like I'm bagging it. I actually love computers and technologies, but I think that there is another side to it that we need to keep in mind.
And what's that?
Well, just that you can misread texts. You can. I love the autocorrect on some of them sometimes.
Oh, how embarrassing is
it
that
is
if you
very
don't read
embarrassing
it again,
at times, but also that you can't. There's no intonation, so you don't know if someone's being angry or making a statement.
That's where I use those little gadgets. Do you use those?
I think there's absolutely a language of emotions through text and different things, different subtleties. It's just whether you've learnt it or not yet. Because
Which I haven't, of course. So.
Well, I'm not saying that maybe you have or haven't, but there is absolutely a language there. And 3 dots means this, 2 dots means this, all caps means something. Caps locks is cruise control for cool, they say.
Really?
Well, not really. It's kind of a joke, but
I actually need to sit with you and go through some of this and just bring myself up to speed on it.
One of the things I thought was interesting, though, some of the people said it is giving us more to do, and I find that it has given us more to do. So what are the psychological effects on that?
I think if there's lots more things to do, one of the things I mentioned earlier about the rewiring of the brain, a concern that we have, or not a concern, and we don't know whether it's good or bad, is that children these days, for example, they're not learning like I used to learn back in the day, as my children say. That we used to have to look up things and memorise things and remember things. The children these days have to know where to find it, and theirs is different than what we had to do. We don't know if that's good or bad. It is just different.
Yeah, cool. Sandra, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me on.
Look forward to seeing you out on the street again.
We'll see you next time.
For the Exchange. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to The Exchange with our guests, technology entrepreneur Michael Woods and psychologist Sally-Anne McCormack. We're talking about work-life balance in an overstimulated society. How do we manage this without it managing us? Sally-Anne?
I think it's really good to set boundaries. We need to say, here are some times in the family or wherever you might be, to say technology-free time, put the phones down, put the appliances away, and let's communicate.
Michael's nodding, but do you really agree with
that? Is that
from
because
what you've told us?
Is that because we're straddling two worlds? Will we see a family in 5 years' time that will not be doing that?
I think you can see families for the last 100 years that haven't been doing this. I would encourage people to just get into gardening. Get into nature. Get into things that are going to make you connect with everything, and that's what I do. I love it.
Just go out in the garden. Do you have your phone in your pocket?
No, and I plug my music in, I got my headphones on, and of course I do.
But the jury is still out on whether it actually is going to be problematic going forward.
All we know for now is that it is changing the wiring of the brain. It is changing the way that the neurons fire in the brain, and we don't know yet whether that's good or bad. It just hasn't been around for long enough, and we haven't been using it for long enough.
What about you? What do you think, Michael, about that?
I think it is a good thing. I think there's still unknown about the damages of it, but I think through our experience, in two capacities. One, in professional video games. You meet a professional video game player, and we've known a lot. And one who sticks out for me is a very interesting guy who was a professional StarCraft player, who then went over to become a professional poker player. Now, he did this within a 1-year period. So that's not something that generally people can do, to take on a profession like that. And I think that comes from his, it's 100 hours a week of gaming for 5 years. It's pretty...
And you're saying that's a healthy thing?
I'm not saying necessarily it's a healthy thing in that level, but I'm saying it's absolutely rewiring the brain. He must have the ability to crunch numbers in his head at a rate that not many people could comprehend.
But one of the questions then would be, how does that translate if he were to live outside the computer world? How does that translate and how relevant is that? And it's a good question, because there's a lot of children that I see in my practice who are, we question the word addicted, but addicted to computers and to the computer games. And so they're actually giving up their social careers, their social lives, their schooling, they're giving up everything. I've got children that, get up at early hours or go to sleep at really late hours because they're so addicted to that dopamine hit that you can't get anywhere else.
And so they just go back, they crave that. And have they lost the ability then to communicate with other people in a normal way? Do you notice that?
I don't know. Well, often there is a connection with addiction and depression. So when you were saying go out and do some gardening, I think that's great because you get a bit of serotonin and stimulation from the sun. But the problem is these children are... it's such a big, hard hit, much like a drug. Like when you take drugs, there's this really big hit. And how do you compare that to something out in the real world? And that's the question.
Sport?
Sport isn't accessible, though, at 11 o'clock at night when you're trying to go to bed. But it's true. It's absolutely true. And so it's just a question. It's not a statement.
Yeah. Very quickly, where do you think technology is heading? What do you think we'll see in the next few years?
Next few years?
Yeah.
Or how many is a few years?
Oh,
say
5.
3. There you go.
Okay.
I think we'll have a complete transformation of the education system. I believe that the blackboard will get thrown out and we'll be down to where it should be, which is learning in an environment where you can completely self-paced. I think health is going to be one of the biggest sections. Imagine devices to track everything that goes into your body and out of your body all at once. I think those are going to be the health and education. It's the biggest transformation areas.
And that's got to be a good thing, Sally-Anne?
I think it is. One of the things, just quickly, I was asked about a comparison earlier. It's like an eating disorder. It's part of our lives. It's just there, and we need to make sure that we work a way around using it in a healthy way.
Okay, great comments. Thank you both so much for being on the program today. It's been absolutely wonderful. Sally-Anne's authored a couple of books and Michael's created a couple of educational apps. You can find out more details on them and more about this show on our website. We look forward to seeing you next time.
See you then.